So today I've invited my friend Levi Lyle to talk about food and fitness. Here you go.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about food because I'm a farmer. Let's add an F to it. So food, fitness, and farming, maybe.
Food, fitness, and farming. Hey.
So I am a person who realized early on as a young adult that the fuel I was putting in my body was important. I was a college athlete, and I could see that if I ate garbage or stayed out late at night, that I then couldn't get the best out of my body on the football field.
Okay.
And so, well, let me back up a little bit. I was also a 10-year-old kid in 4th and 5th grade that was very fidgety. And I could...
ADHD?
Yeah, well, back then they didn't identify ADHD.
I see.
My mom told me many years later that she purposefully didn't name it to, teachers when they would go to the conferences and hear about how I misbehaved and I was, had a lot of excess energy in the classroom. And she didn't want me labeled because she knew it was just natural, right? And in my own rearing of children, my wife and I recognized that that child that is bouncing off the walls and acting all crazy, if we get them outdoors, there's no problem. They can run around and scream. It's the confined spaces that are this marker, which suddenly then we're all really uncomfortable.
The unnatural indoor environment, maybe we could even say. I mean, it's nice to be indoors when it's nasty outside, but when it's really nice outside, you want to be outside, right? Especially a kid.
Absolutely. Now, on top of that, you take what a child has eaten. I tell my 9-year-old, I'm not going to make food decisions for you because you've got to learn to make your own food decisions. And so if we're going to load up on sugar and eat whatever right before a meal, then just be observant, I say, of how you feel. And when bedtime comes around and all of a sudden there's a big argument about brushing teeth or going upstairs, what have we eaten in the last couple hours? And it's a delicate conversation, but it's certainly connected. And so finding ways to help my children see that it's connected. So it's not just dad preaching, but instead sort of a discovery on their own that, wait a minute.
I hear that sugar is more addictive than heroin.
Yes, I've also heard those statistics. Oreo cookies are more addictive than crack cocaine. and certainly Doritos chips, which I do enjoy, with a nice scoop of cottage cheese on them, they would be a food that is also in that category, right? Like we just can't stop.
No.
And so,
there's a lot of foods and drinks that are designed that way that literally you can't stop. You need to have more and more of it, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So I was an organic inspector for a few years. And as an organic inspector, I would go to farms, and my job is to do an audit of that farmer's practices. And many farmers in Iowa that farm organically are growing commodities, corn or soybeans, that go to feed mills to feed livestock. But there's also many organic farmers in Iowa that are growing produce in small gardens and going to food stores and farmers markets and community centers and sharing that organic produce with their communities. So when I would go to a farm as an inspector, I would get asked the question, do you eat all organic food? And to me, it was comical to answer because of the stage of life that I was in then. Especially, I had young children. At that time, I would have had 3 young children, all under the age of 10. And it is challenging and expensive to buy or raise organic foods when you've got so much other stuff going on.
Absolutely.
And so
unless you grow it yourself.
Yeah, and include the children in it.
Yeah.
But even as a 1-year-old crawling around the garden just eating handfuls of dirt, it has its difficulties.
That's not a bad thing, actually.
Yeah, we could just talk about that. But what I answered, the way I answered that question then, and I still answer that today, and this is just who I am, is that I try to make organic food choices for the major food decisions. So there's the dirty dozen they talk about when it comes to fruits and vegetables. And some of the things on that list are strawberries and blueberries. And I know a person who is in the strawberry industry, and they will not eat strawberries that aren't organic because they know what goes on strawberries inside of the facilities where they grow. They don't grow strawberries in the soil. They grow them in industrial facilities, much the same way we do other things in agriculture these
days. Like a CAFO for strawberries?
Yeah, so I make food choices when it comes to organic that are the most impactful they can be for my family and I.
Good.
And otherwise, I don't assign to just eating organic. I eat a balance.
Yeah.
Yep. How about you?
Oh, me. I guess these days I mainly eat organic food. Speaking of strawberries, I can't find organic strawberries that have anything to do with what I remember as strawberries back in Denmark 50 or 60, 70 years ago, whatever it was. But other organic berries like blueberries and those kind of berries, Aronia berries, the vast difference between organic and non-organic. What is it about strawberries?
Are you saying, and why are they not organic?
Is it organic?
Why are they not good
two
quality?
types of organic and then real organic. Is that also a discussion we need to have?
Do you mean real organic as in the organization, real organic?
No, like super organic or actually organic, and then something that is called organic, but actually it's maybe has no contact with the soil. It's mainly just water and it's indoor.
Hydroponic type raising.
Is that something we have to talk about today?
Let's not get deep into it. But hydroponic agriculture qualifies under the umbrella of the National Organic Standards, and so that is a form of organic certified crop production. But
that's some criticism, I think.
It is a completely different way of raising food than out in the soil.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, what was your question?
Well, we were going deep into strawberries.
Oh yeah, we're going deep into.
But I think it's a great food example because they're so wonderful to eat in large quantities, right? And strawberries.
Well, I actually
sweet.
prefer Aronia berries.
Yeah, in combination. So he keeps saying this because Aronia berries are what I grow on my farm. And I'm your source of Aronia berries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're very tart, and they're, some people don't like them for that reason, but I happen to be completely not concerned about tartness. I just feel the vitality of the berry, which is off the scale.
Aronia berry is in a category of fruits that have not been highly selected. And so that's where the tartness and what we call the polyphenols and antioxidants, they're very high because we haven't selected those things out of them like we have the other
they're wild, right?
fruits. Yeah, wild. And that brings to light a conversation about strawberries. Sorry to pull us back there, but I have a family member who remembers the way his grandfather and him would pick wild strawberries, and they would get on their hands and knees, and to me this is a foreign thing, so my eyes were wide open when he was describing this, but they would be on their hands and knees and they would just crawl along the field and just go this fast picking wild strawberries, and wild strawberries are the size of a dime.
They're tiny.
Maybe, but
they're packed.
Yeah, and that type of I mean, when I am with my kids and have them out in the orchard picking tart cherries or Aronia berries, they're just eating them like crazy. And these are foods that when I'm at a farmer's market and I offer someone an Aronia berry, they might put it in their mouth not realizing what they're in for and then look for a place to spit because they're not accustomed to that tart flavor. But on the other hand, to somebody who is picking it off the bush and having that experience out in nature, they wholly enjoy it. And I think that's a big part of that conversation about what makes food good food. And that's, I think, a connection we have to it. Do we know where our food comes from? Do we trust that source of food? More and more, people are making decisions about food based on local sources because they trust those sources. And so for my family, we'll buy a local beef from a farmer just up the road because we trust that source. And it becomes, it's not an organic or not organic conversation. It's more of a local conversation.
Right. But we promise people to talk about food and fitness. So where does fitness fit into all this?
Have you found that your vegetable diet gives you more energy? Is this the reason, or is there often there's a what do you call it? A reason that is a belief system, right? Or like that we're harming animals, or something like that, right? And both are fair reasons. But there should never be any judgment about that. I think some people really need to eat meat or chicken or something like that, and that's fine. But I've been a vegetarian for more than 50 years, so I can't really compare my energy level, which is probably quite high. I tend to go on the trail every morning for 10 miles on my bike, and that's very enjoyable. I guess that comes in under the category of fitness, right? Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, I have done the experiment. So I just ate a vegetable diet for a couple weeks here. I did this about a year ago. And I went back to eating a diet of meat and pork and chicken because I do enjoy meat. But after 2 weeks of not eating animal proteins and doing a workout that required stamina and endurance, I saw my endurance go through the roof. And then there's controversies out there and tons of contradicting information.
And the reason for that is there's so many different types of human bodies.
Absolutely.
And everybody wants to put everybody into, because they like what they're doing. Everybody should do the same thing. But that doesn't work.
It's true of almost everything, but it's definitely true when it comes to food. And
fitness.
And the right fitness for any specific person.
Right.
Boy, that could cause me to leap to another topic. Maybe we'll come to it later, but this conversation that you and I have had other times about swimming in the ice. Is that way, because I know there are people who say they should definitely not do a cold shower / ice bath right before bed because it keeps them up all night. Boy, that's not my experience.
No.
I get in an ice bath right before bed and I am out for the night. To me, it's just communication for my mind to go ahead and shut down. And so that is another example of what's right for me. I wouldn't tell somebody else that that's definitely the way they should do it.
Right.
But food is something that is certainly that way. When, now I hear a lot about people that eat a carnivore, you say the word for me, carnivore diet. So
I'm not American, I can't say carnivore, but you're saying carnival, so.
So when people have a diet of only meat, they apparently adapted that and find great energy levels in that. And so there's enough people I hear talking about that.
I hope it's it's a good, pure kind of meat. I hope, because otherwise it might not be the case. But anyways, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so of course we won't get into all the science of meat versus non-meat,
Right.
because it's not important to me, and
No.
if it's not important to you, that's
No, no.
But people make life choices when it comes to food, and I think it's relevant to share with people our experience, because this is our conversation today.
Yeah.
When I am going to do something that I know is several days out, and I know is going to take a high level, my highest ability of functioning, both mental and physical, then I go to the highest sources of energy I can find, highest sources of protein, and those sources are usually plant-based.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. So, farming?
Well, I'm a grain farmer and a vegetable and fruit producer.
And Aronia?
Yeah, we grow Aronia berries, tart cherries, honeyberries,
Honeyberries,
pawpaw,
yes,
and
yes.
even some persimmons.
Yeah.
And in growing those fruits in small scale, that makes our farm a diverse enterprise farm.
And what is a diverse enterprise farm?
Diverse enterprise farms are once the only way farmers were, right? Like
Right.
before my lifetime, all farms were diverse enterprise farms. But now we're more into a monoculture type of specialty in agriculture is what we see in our society.
Yeah.
But diverse enterprise farms have multiple operations, and in my case, we farm organic corn and soybeans. We farm conventional corn and soybeans, and we have our organic fruit that we grow, and we keep a garden. We take those things to farmers markets and to health food stores, and then that helps balance out where our sources of income are coming from. It's often about the income, right? Like you need to make a living and make the income work, but it's also about a way that we wanted to raise our children. My wife and I chose to bring our children up in a way that gives them experiences out in nature and doing some of this work, but also working with the products and working with people to share them at farmers markets, and that's an important value that we want for our kids.
Absolutely. The community value of being a farmer is really, really important, I think. And you mentioned you knew the farmer next door who has this wonderful grass-fed beef, and you know them. There's a connection. There's an affinity, and therefore you trust their food, right? That's very important. I think that local farming and decentralized local community is very important. If everything goes bad on a more kind of, we could say, global or federal level, it's important that our local communities have some integrity and that we are communicating with each other properly. So, you were talking about non-organic bean and corn production. Are you doing maybe less pesticides, less tilling, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, even in they call it conventional agriculture. So you're using chemicals, you're using seeds that are GMO, which means you can come into the field and spray them with a chemical that would usually kill them, but they have a gene that makes them tolerant to that chemical. Then that gene is not natural in that plant.
So you're using those seeds?
Yeah, we also farm conventionally, and so
do those seeds somehow migrate over to the organic part of your farm in terms of some of those DNA changes coming over there? Is that an issue?
That's a complex science.
Yeah.
It would be an entire conversation on its own, but what we know is that let's take what you just asked and make it about the weeds. Okay, so what we know is weeds in those fields, in a matter of 15 years or 20 years have become tolerant of those chemicals, and now nothing can kill those weeds. Nothing. And so
super weeds.
Yeah,
we should eat them guys.
Yeah,
I think.
Palmer amaranth is the common name, and it started in the South United States and has moved up from Georgia and Carolinas, and it moved up through Missouri, and is now in Iowa, and going further north. So these weeds won't die using typical agricultural chemicals.
I have great respect for weeds. I mean, dandelion, lamb's quarter, some of the most nutrient-rich plants are considered weeds, and people are trying to kill them. I think we should eat those instead of other things.
Yeah, so how do I take this and make this about your question? Your question was, do the genes leap?
Yeah.
Well, the plants become tolerant and they move. Okay. So that's the one thing I did address. But the science of it says that when we eat something, anything, when we eat it, a portion, a small percentage of that thing integrates itself. I'll make a DNA strand, and it integrates itself into our DNA, and it becomes part of us. And so it's unavoidable. Yes, these things that we are consuming are becoming part of us. Now, is that harmful? Is it not harmful? I don't know the answer to that.
What percentage of traditional and organic farming do you have on your land?
We are I'll say acres, because I'm not a math person, but we have 60 acres of organic and 600 acres total.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yep, so is that 20% or something organic? And it's a good fit. A decade ago, I told my father I would like to farm organically, and he has been very supportive always. And he had cancer when I was 6 years old, and survived. And for those reasons, I believe he has been more willing, because he has always believed his cancer came from farm chemicals. And he has always been willing to come along for the ride and follow this venture or that venture regarding organics.
What could possibly go wrong with having the son experiment a little bit on 10% of the land?
Here and there, he's always been supportive of that.
Okay, good.
And so what was I going to say? We're doing some of both, but the reason, here's the thought. I originally said, let's be organic. Let's farm everything organically, right? So he reminded me that when I was in junior high, that's when Roundup was invented, and so we no longer had to row cultivate corn. The little bit of row cultivation that I did when I was 13 years old, he said I was horrible. And you look back, and row cultivating is when you go down the corn row and you've got shovels between every row of corn, and so you're killing weeds with the shovels.
Wow.
Turning over the soil.
Wow.
And 12 rows at a time, I would just kill corn. And all the way through the field. And so when I went organic, he agreed that he would help with some of the row cultivation.
Okay.
But the realization that, 60 acres is enough work is one realization. The other realization is, and this is a conversation about the state of farmland in rural America, the other realization is that farmers don't own all the land they farm. We lease some of the land. So usually the landowner is somebody who doesn't even live in Iowa. More and more, that is a second or third generation owner of that land who doesn't live in Iowa, has never lived in Iowa, and frankly, it's just another asset like money in the stock market to them. And if you are an organic farmer, part of the National Organic Standards say you have to bring along the soil and pay attention to the ecosystem and do things that are good for erosion and the washing of the nutrients downriver. And if I invest in a piece of land that is very expensive to grow cover crops every year and to minimize my use of fertilizers that are unnecessary. So then, say next year, the landowner says, you know, we decided to rent that land to somebody else. Now I've invested a huge amount of money in a piece of land that I no longer farm, and that farmer's just going to come in and farm however they want to farm. And so the land that is leased is not taken care of in the same way that a farmer takes care of land that he or she owns. And so
do you guys own your land?
we own some land. Yeah.
Some land, but not all of it. Not all
No.
600,
A small
700
portion.
acres.
No, not even close.
Wow.
A small portion.
Wow. I didn't realize that.
And so that impacts the way farmers farm.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to say one's right or wrong, but I just had to take a hard look at my desire to farm organically, and that it didn't make economic sense for me to be using practices on land that next year I won't be farming anyway. And so that guided me to be, you know, this is enough. I'll farm the land we own as organic, and the land that we don't own in a way that is, frankly, easier.
Yeah.
You spray it, you plant it, and you harvest it.
Yeah, and that's where the money is also, right, still.
This is supposed to be a conversation about food and fitness.
And farming.
And farming, okay. So it is, I am biased, and I'll just say it's an illusion that a farm is making more money by using those more efficient practices.
Interesting.
There are costs to our communities and to our larger society in food that is not as nutrient dense, in families that are no longer farming and now live off in some big city because their opportunity to farm would have required a huge investment in equipment and the high prices of farmland. And so is agriculture making more money now off an acre than it once did 50 years ago? I think it's definitely, the answer is no. It's not making as much money per acre. But those calculations aren't going to matter when you go talk to your banker about the cost of crop inputs and getting a loan to be able to farm, because there's no line item on the ledger that says community impact, nutritional quality of food. These things don't exist, and so they don't exist in those conversations.
I see.
And so the economics of farming is not in line with what is truly in the best interest of ourselves or our communities or our society.
Not that I know anything about it, but I'm guessing subsidies from the federal government play a part in the economy also for the farmer, right?
It was the 1950s when subsidization of fertilizers and for farmers came into play, and that subsidization began the undermining of farmers who didn't want to play that game. Organic farmers who said, you know what, I don't want to use herbicides or synthetic chemicals. Now they're competing with the farmer next door who has higher yields and cheaper sources of nitrogen.
I see.
And that competition has shrunken and more shrunken the farmland of that farmer who doesn't want to participate in that game. And the subsidies go to the bigger farmer. And
I see.
I mean, just by percentage, right? Like I get subsidies for the farmland I farm that is both organic and conventional. I get subsidies. But if I farmed 1,000 acres, I would be getting more subsidies than farming 600. And so that subsidization of agriculture has made it more challenging to be a diverse enterprise farmer.
To conclude our brief discussion here about food, fitness, and farming, I'll put another F in. How do you see the future of food, fitness, and farming, Levi?
I'm glad you asked. In this case, it's important to look at the future, because farms that are multi-generational are an important aspect of having vibrant rural communities.
Mm-hmm.
If my children have the opportunity and want to come back and farm once
Mm-hmm.
they're grown, I want to lay a framework that makes that possible.
Yeah.
And I feel strongly that that framework can't just be growing conventional corn and soybeans. And it's not really necessary, but I'll just say I have 4 daughters, right? And so that example, we know historically daughters are unlikely.
Yeah.
More and more girls are getting into agriculture, but those daughters are unlikely to come back to a rural community and say, yeah, let's just grow corn and beans and spray them with Roundup and take them to the elevator. Right? Like daughters don't tend to want to farm that way. And so having a diverse enterprise farm is paving the way, hopefully, that if my daughters desire to farm, there will be something there for them. They can take Aronia berries to market. They can grow a crop of strawberries, which isn't that where we started this whole conversation? If they want to be a strawberry farmer, you said that they're hard to find. It's hard to find organic strawberries.
Yeah. Maybe your daughters would provide me with the strawberries that I need.
Yeah. But I believe the serious point is sculpting these children, and so they have the skill set and the confidence to do what they want to do and to value our communities, and in rural Iowa especially, that takes educating our children about that value. And if they have those tools, then they can do what they want to do, but make the best choices possible.